Hi guys, thank you for watching Capable of Change and welcome back. Today I want to talk a little bit about drug vocabulary. I think it's so important that we learn words, specific words to use so that we can avoid generalizations in the field and in the substance abuse and recovery community. Not everybody knows what not everybody has the same experience as everybody else. So it's just real important that we choose our words carefully so that everybody knows what we are talking about. In my last video, I talked a little bit about how the substance abuse community and clinicians and doctors are still trying to narrow down what substance abuse and addiction actually is. These things are absolutely changing as we speak, and we all can have an impact on them with our words. It is so important to use the right words and convey exact meanings to people so that you can explain to them how you feel, because that might be enough to change somebody's view about addicts, recovery, substance abuse, social justice, whatever you're fighting for. That just might be enough to change their ideas. So, um, recently I was on a forum for people seeking information about recovery, beginning recovery. I think it was a Kratom forum specifically. The lady was asking about her husband. He was using some sort of drug and she was unsure as what the drug was. She made a comment that said that drug use is drug use. She didn't care what he was using, if it was weed, if it was heroin, or if it was Suboxone. It didn't matter to her. Use was use. And I thought, that is basically what's wrong with the world and how they view addicts. Drug use is not drug use. There is a huge difference between marijuana, a plant that has been used for centuries to cure all kinds of ails and has little to no harm from its use other than it being illegal. Um, and heroin, which is an opiate that kills people, a huge number of people every year, and Suboxone, which is also an opiate, but it saves hundreds of people. And to lump all those together in one bucket is, it's the problem of our lawmakers, and it comes down to using words like drugs. Drugs are bad, or drugs, say no to drugs. We call pharmaceuticals drugs. We call heroin drugs. We call cocaine and crack drugs. We call your mama's cough syrup drugs. We call them all drugs, but there's definitely good drugs and bad drugs. Nobody specifies that. We call marijuana drugs, and it's a plant that you can grow in your yard. We arrest people every year for consuming and possessing that plant, but we call it drugs too. So, I have a problem with that. I further have a problem with calling marijuana a drug. I actually even don't like calling marijuana weed because, weeds are something that we pull up, right? It's really comes down to, like, even when we as a culture, what we do with our colors is what we the use of symbols in our culture is just um, it's amazing, right? Like women wear white on their wedding day to represent virginity, pureness. You know, we talk about black being dirty, muddy. You know, we also use these terms to describe people. So we have a long and torrid history with our symbols, and saying that marijuana is a weed, just like calling heroin dog food. Like they did that when I was using, right? You have all kinds of slang names for things, but they all have like a little bit of truth in them, right? You know, to call heroin dog food is to say that the people that uses it is a dog, right? To call marijuana a weed is to say that it's worthless, right? It's something that you would want to pull up and throw away. When in reality, used correctly, it has saved a ton of people. I personally like to say the answer to drugs is more drugs. More specifically, just the classification of the drugs that we already have. For instance, Suboxone is an opiate. Yet we make all these laws against opiates. So what happens is, or we call them opioids. Um, what happens is when you get arrested with Suboxone, you end up getting the same charges as you would if you had heroin. When people in their mind think about opiates, they think about all these things that kill people every year, people ODing. But Suboxone has helped many, many addicts. I mean, it's like, I felt like when I went to prison and when I got out, I had to be clean off of all drugs. And that was difficult for me because I had, well, it wasn't difficult for me at the time, but I really thought that if I could just smoke marijuana, maybe I wouldn't want to do heroin anymore. I feel like for people that have already had problems with substance abuse and substance use, what's the harm in letting them consume a plant like kratom? Why are we going to the trouble to try to get kratom outlawed when it is helping people get off drugs? Same with marijuana. Even to the same point, there's been a lot of things that have come out about psychedelics, mushrooms, natural mushrooms that are grown of the earth. Um, you know, why are we taking these drugs that are made on the earth and calling them illegal? And that goes all the way back to, you know, how dare you say something that God created is bad, right? But I'm not going to get into religion. Um, all I really want to say is that we need to watch what we say, how we classify these drugs, and how we refer to specific things in the substance abuse and recovery community. It is important. The rest of the world is watching and waiting and trying to figure out, and they're taking a cue from people that have used and have overcome. So it's very important that we figure out what we want to say and how we want to say it, and then we don't divert from that. Um, and so I just wanted to clear up today why I think vocabulary is important in the substance abuse community. So if you have anything else you want to add to this, put it down in the comments. I'm definitely interested in hearing about what you think. And just keep searching, and thanks for listening.